Hello, everybody, and welcome into Tunnel Vision, a show presented to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Jack Smith, joined in studio by Ryan Abraham and Connor Morrissette, and we are set to preview USC and Nebraska as the Trojans and the Cornhuskers both come off of bye weeks, and they're both on 3-game losing streaks. Guys, we have a lot to talk about today, but first want to say, if you guys are in the chat, thank you guys so much for joining us here today for Tunnel Vision. If you want to leave your comments, your concerns, your questions, anything in the chat, we'll be able to put those on the screen and answer your questions at the end of the show. And if you want to call in, make sure you do so at 512-4TUNNEL. The number's right there on the screen. Call in at any time, and we are happy to take your calls and hear your thoughts. But guys, after a bye week and everything that's going on with USC, it feels like the one thing that everybody is focused on is 2 more wins to make a bowl game, which is certainly a lower goal than USC had this year. But it's an uphill battle, and it starts with this weekend against Nebraska.
It certainly does. If you look across the Big Ten in Week 12, a lot of this team needs to win to get to a bowl game. UCLA and Washington are playing, of course, USC and Nebraska. USC's in the doldrums. Not a 3-game losing streak, though, Jack. They've lost 4 of the last 5.
You're right.
So I don't know if it's like worse or whatever. They did beat a Rutgers team, and we were talking about it before the show. We're like, wasn't there 2 3-game? Yes, like when USC played Rutgers, they were both on 3-game losing streaks. So USC was able to win that one, but hasn't won since. So we'll see what kind of happens there. But a lot of weird stuff going on. We thought it'd be like a chill bye week, maybe. No. Let's change quarterbacks, have some sanctions. Legendary coach passes away. Major decommitment and questioning of the recruiting class with signing day, the early signing period just coming up. A lot of weird stuff going on. Oh, and by the way, the team is 4-5, lost 4 of the last 5. And literally, like, you will not make a bowl game if loses on Saturday. Like, I mean, it's still mathematically possible, but if you lose to Nebraska at home, I don't think you're sweeping UCLA, who's playing very well, and Notre Dame, who's also playing very well. So, but you can learn all about it, and I'm going to let Connor get in here. I'll just talk a little bit. On the Peristyle, USCFootball.com, are you a member? Like, you're watching the show. We appreciate it. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We put this out in podcast form all across the podcast network. But what you can do is get this stuff all the time, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, literally go to the Peristyle, reading stuff about USCFootball.com. If you're not a member, you can use the promo code Peristyle50 for 50% off an annual membership. It is well worth the money. Everyone that signs up, they're like, oh my God, there's so much great information here. I love it. We got all kinds of good stuff from me, Jack, Connor, Chris, Gerard, RJ, Shotgun, just content going up all the time. And the Peristyle is interesting, especially at a time like this. Sometimes really good, sometimes a little frustrating, but so much information in there, so much you can read about USC. So go use Peristyle50 as a promo code if you want to sign up. If you haven't signed up, you're one of those filthy casuals that just doesn't sign up for anything. That's what they like to say on the 2-Star Composite Recruits podcast, or however they say it. A lot of words there. I don't know which order you put them in. Check it out, Peristyle50 for 50% off.
You definitely should subscribe, because tomorrow on the War Room, which is another feature we do, where we all hear little news and nuggets during the week, and we put it all together and give you some VIP inside info every Friday morning. There's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff tomorrow about the state of recruiting and some sanction stuff, and you just want to be over there on the Peristyle to get that. So that's in addition to the message board. It's a VIP article that we do every week. But as for this game, so yeah, bowl eligibility is obviously important, but how about a new quarterback? Jayden Maiava coming in, replacing Miller Moss, making his first start, and yes, USC is 4-5, but if Maiava can lead USC to like a 40-plus point big output and USC wins big, it's only 1 week and people still won't be too happy, but that will at least show that USC's offense is moving in the right direction. Let's just cut to the chase. USC's offense this year has been brutally bad compared to Lincoln Riley offenses in the past, so Riley recognized that. He made a change at quarterback, and Maiava can move around a little bit. All week we've heard about how he has a big arm. In this season of crap, this could be something good. So let's see what happens Saturday.
It's a funny season of crap. And, you know, everyone's talking about his mobility, but the other aspect, watching, you know, what this USC offense did the last couple of years, if you like advanced stats, both years with Caleb Williams, over 9 yards per attempt. And that's getting the ball down the field pretty good. And now you're talking about 7 yards per attempt. That's a big difference in offense. And Maiava, when he was at UNLV, was closer to that 9, like 8.5 or something like that, if I remember correctly. He does like getting the ball down the field. There were some issues with turnovers, but we've seen that with Miller Moss as well. So it's not just the maybe on some of those mesh plays, he's keeping it himself and taking off and running. I think you're going to see some of that against a very good and stingy Nebraska run defense. But watch for him to throw the ball down the field a little bit more, especially with Nebraska's pass defense not being that great.
I think in a season where we've been trying to figure out how do we put this year into words, I thought Connor with a year of crap summed it up pretty well.
A year of crap. Here is a bowl full of, is it ice cream? Oh, it's full of crap. Great. That's what I got. It's like you're opening a present and you're expecting the Red Ryder, whatever, and you get a Zeppelin, like for Christmas Story is coming up soon, which I love. Do you guys like that movie?
Oh, yeah.
I like that movie a
No,
lot.
that's an old person kind of Christmas movie.
Oh,
that's probably why you like it.
It's true because I'm an old person. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie for you?
Oh,
Jeff?
yeah. Okay. I think this is an old person's kind of game this week because this is like two of the biggest blue bloods. No, this is just tradition on tradition in college football, and USC is going back to its 1972 traditional classic uniforms. But these are two of the biggest blue bloods in the sport. And they're both really reeling this season. As you mentioned, Ryan, USC's lost 4 of 5. Nebraska has struggled, losing 3 straight. And these are two programs that have been trying to get back to full-time relevancy for quite a while now, and two groups that have really struggled in one-score games. I think there are a lot of parallels this year between USC and Nebraska, and I'm curious where the comparison is most interesting for you guys.
Yeah, it's funny. USC's just gone up against teams that needed like a boost, right? Like we said, Minnesota hadn't won an FBS game, I think, in 6 tries, and then, they get one against USC. And they've actually played pretty well this year. Maryland is still the only Power 5 win I think they have, Power 4 win they have is the USC game. Washington needed to get off the schneid and try to make bowl eligibility. It just seemed like whoever needed a big boost, they got it from playing USC. And Nebraska, of all the teams in the Big Ten, they have the longest bowl drought. They haven't made a bowl since 2016. They start out 5-1, so you're like, okay, not only are they going to make a bowl, they're going to win like 8, 9, 10 games. Now they're struggling to try to make a bowl. So this is could make their whole season kind of thing, get off the 3-game losing streak. This is a tough one for me, Jack, because there's so much that's been going on, and USC's sort of been like the helpful, it's like almost like the easy button for teams that need to get back on track. Like, we're going to play USC, like no problem there. Now USC's covered at home. They played much better at home. But this is just one of those things where you've both had a week off, both made major changes on the offensive side, one with a quarterback, one with the offensive coordinator. Just not sure what to expect. And Lincoln Riley threw the ball a lot against a very good pass defense at Washington. Well, now you put in a quarterback that can run more. Are you going to run the ball a lot against a very good rush defense? I'm just not sure how this is going to go. I mean, we haven't seen this team for a while. You sort of get like shell-shocked like week after week of, oh, my God, that's kind of disappointing. Now you have both teams coming in that are like, oh, my God, this is going to be disappointing. Someone's probably going to be pretty happy coming out of this one, and someone is going to continue the trail of tears that has been this season.
With the parallels, Nebraska got beaten up by Indiana pretty good, so it's not like they've had a close game every week. But they've had fourth-quarter issues, too, and that's stemmed to even before Matt Rule, like Scott Frost. It seems like the season that USC is having right now, that's been Nebraska for like the last decade plus where, they win some games, but as time goes on, they have leads in the fourth quarter, and a lot of times they just haven't been able to get it done. So there are some parallels there. That was written about on our site, Ryan, on the Know Your Foe piece that you published today where we had the Nebraska writer join our site and talk about this matchup. He just said what USC is experiencing this year, that's been Nebraska for like a decade. So that's the first parallel that jumps out. But to your point about the offensive changes, that's another easy one, even though they are different with USC making the quarterback change and Nebraska making the coaching change. How crazy is that Dana Holgorsen was not even on Nebraska's staff until like 10 days ago, and when he was hired, it was as an analyst. And then Matt Rule comes out Monday, oh, yeah, by the way, he's our offensive coordinator. He's going to call the plays. Like, what? This guy hasn't even been in the building, and now he is the offensive coordinator. That, to me, seemed kind of panicky. I understand. I heard some rumors that Raiola, like, you want to make him happy, and this was a big swing, and they're going to make a change. But, like, it seemed panicky to me, and I just don't know how that can help. Like, are these guys going to be on the same page? I don't know how they possibly could be. So definitely something to watch there. Nebraska's new offensive coordinator wasn't on staff like 2 weeks ago. Crazy.
Since their last game, he wasn't on staff. And it wasn't like, so they make him an analyst. It wasn't like they played a game and stunk on offense. They're like, okay, now we're promoting you. Like, they didn't even play the game. Like, you know what? Like, we brought you here for this. From what I was told, that he was around like Lincoln, and they were trying to get him to, because he was fired from whatever was it,
Houston,
yeah. And so then you were sort of like, okay, whatever, and they wanted to put him in here. So I think there's still, it's not like he was in like Spain or something and just dropped into Nebraska there. So he's been around, but like obviously you're not with the staff, and you were just with the staff for like a week and a half. But from what I've read in the Know Your Foe piece, so Brian did a nice job with that from our Husker 247 site. Answered a lot of detail on the questions I had, and part of it being the need to simplify. Matt Rule talked about simplifying the offense, and that could help a lot for a freshman quarterback who they put a lot on. And I know his status was still in question.
He announced today he's good to go.
Okay, he did announce today. All right, so that's good. But I mean, I feel like simplifying things, it could be better. Like, you just don't know. Like, yes, I mean, sometimes when it's all like, just imagine what happened in the Holiday Bowl. I don't know if this is a good parallel, but you get rid of Grinch and now, like, okay, how's the defense going to be? Well, somehow they're tackling better and stuff. I think, and our light's going off in here. I'll have to take a picture of that. I think it's one of those situations where, okay, so it wasn't working because we're looking at our wristbands and we don't know what to do when the ball is being snapped. Like, oh, what's going on here? Instead of like, okay, we're going to get rid of that, and here's a napkin, and I'm going to take a pen, and let's do this. Like, you cover this gap, you go here, and you just go out and play, and you actually get better results. So will there be something like that? You're just going to tell Raiola, like, okay, here's your first read, here's your second read, otherwise run, or whatever you want to do. And it just is simpler for him, and it works. So.
Yeah, there was overthinking going on,
yeah.
And that was what Matt Rule talked about. We were trying to do too many things, and it was clunky, and it just didn't work. So simplifying things, that looks to be what Nebraska will do by bringing in Dana Holgorsen. And what's also funny about the Holgorsen connection is Doug Belk was the defensive coordinator at Houston last season under Holgorsen, and then Riley, when he was the player coach at Texas Tech and then a grad assistant, he was there when Dana Holgorsen was at Texas Tech. And why is Doug Belk here? Because Riley called Dana Holgorsen and said, hey, I'm looking at this guy to be my secondary coach. What do you think? And now Belk is here. So these guys have a relationship. Riley clearly trusts Dana Holgorsen, and it'll be a fun little reunion on the field. Who will be the better offensive play caller? Whoever is will probably come out on top. So definitely something to watch there.
Yeah, if you're watching, sorry, I did. So there's a light in here in this office that keeps going out, and I told the office people to come fix it, and they did, or they said they did, and then they couldn't figure out what it was. So I needed to take a picture when it was out. So my apologies if you're watching.
I feel like it's like USC, like problem early on, you think it's fixed, but then it comes back.
Yes.
Good thing you took a picture to document.
I just needed to, but like, yeah, sorry about that. My mom is in town, and she's going to come to the game. So if you're going to be at the game and you want to go to the House of Victory tailgate, stop by, say hi. I'll only be there early if you show up at like, 12:45. I'm not going to be there. But if you're going to be there early, like right when it opens at 10 a.m. or whatever, I'll be around. And so she's at home, and I'm going to go have dinner with her. So I wanted to make this show like, tight. But of course, I remember, like I say about all kinds of stuff. I want to ask you about Christmas movies and stuff. That's just the way I do things. So my apologies.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we'll get you home to mom soon. I feel like both of these teams are in similar spots, as we mentioned. They need a new spark. They need new blood to get them there. For USC, it's Jayden Maiava. For Nebraska, you guys mentioned it's Dana Holgorsen. We've kind of broached the topic a little bit, but how much change do you think with both of these teams coming off of buys and making switches on offense? How much change do you really think can be made?
Yeah, I mean, just having a different signal caller, I mean, that's going to be changed. But I think it's more about, yes, like you're going to have a different play caller on one side. How the playbook's going to be different, I don't know. Different signal caller, on the other side where a guy, different dude under center, not that they're under center anymore. But I think it's more about, like, both teams were reeling kind of coming into the game, and how do you get everyone back on track? Because it can wear on a player. Everyone talked about Nebraska not making a bowl game forever, like the longest streak in the Big Ten, and then all of a sudden it looks like you're going to make one. You're 5-1, and now you can't get a win, and you're like, you can't get to that sixth win. That sort of, that wears on players, and a lot of this bye week, I think, is try to building up morale, not just like what plays you're going to call or who's going to be in there, but what is the morale of the team going to be like? And I think on the USC side, to their credit, it seemed like even when they would have those early losses, they seemed to be pretty resilient, and it was like, okay, we can bounce back from this. But after the losses kept mounting, I think it's tougher on these players. So for me, the biggest thing is how are you going to mentally handle this bye week? Can you get everybody right? Like at home, you can do a Zen moment or whatever, and you go into the dark place that Aaron Rodgers does or whatever, and just sort of be like, okay, I'm going to come out of here, and I'm 0-0. We got to win the last 3 games. If you can do that, you can be a good spot. If you're still sort of like, oh man, here we go again, I think it's going to be really hard to kind of get a momentum going.
Both coaches have talked about how they don't envision too much changing. One thing that I know will change for a fact on USC side, I don't think Lincoln Riley will call too many design runs, but Maiava gives you that scramble option that Miller Moss just did not give you at all. And I thought Miller would be able to move a little bit better than he did, and that just never really happened. So Maiava, he's fleeter on his feet, and he can move around better. That might not be a designed change in the offense, but if a play breaks down, no one's open. Like, how many times did Miller Moss just have all day to sit back against Washington and no one was open? If that happens to Maiava, if Nebraska's defense plays similarly to what Washington did, which was drop a bunch of guys back, only rush 3, make the quarterback beat us in the air because we know we can't run, well, now you have a quarterback who can run. So that'll probably change up how Nebraska defends USC a little bit. But what do you guys think? Like, Riley didn't really dial up any runs for Caleb Williams last year. We talked about it on Instant Analysis, Jack. Was that because he was the number 1 pick and he didn't really want to put him in harm's way? Is that just Riley's offense? Like, I don't really envision Maiava having too many design runs in this game because Riley didn't do it last year. He said the offense isn't going to change a lot. I do see scrambling happening more, but I don't know if it's going to be a drop back and take off situation like we see with some other quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be either of those things, but one thing that Lincoln Riley has continued to do this year that he did with Caleb Williams was give Miller Moss the option to run the football, where it's either hand it off to Woody Marks or run, or hand it off to Woody Marks or run, or dump to someone in the flat. Didn't really feel like Miller Moss picked that run option very often.
Yeah.
When he did, the few times that he did, there were a couple rushing touchdowns in there, or there were some big plays for first downs. I think Jayden Maiava can take advantage of those calls. I do think it's, I think Lincoln Riley probably called those plays a few too many times with Miller Moss back there, and because Miller wouldn't keep the ball as often as maybe a Caleb Williams would in that situation, and then slide down to avoid contact, I thought that meant Woody Marks got hit in the backfield a couple of times, and he's been easily USC's best player in my eyes on offense, and I think that he'll benefit even more from Jayden Maiava being back there, because I think Maiava will be confident enough to take the read when that edge rusher's bearing down on Woody Marks. You have a quarterback that will be confident to keep the football. He can get you a handful of yards. He has the ability to break a longer run. But I think, Connor, the point we made on Instant yesterday is interesting, is will there be more runs because it's Jayden Maiava and not Caleb Williams, who it felt like USC was really trying to protect. And Caleb Williams probably trying to protect himself as well, knowing he had an NFL future ahead of him.
And if you looked at his stats from last year, it's not like he ran a lot. There was one game, I think he had 11 carries. I don't think there was a sack in there, maybe one. I couldn't really find the sack adjusted numbers either. I was just kind of looking, briefly. But, he's – and there wasn't any big, like he had, I think, a 40-yard rushing game or something like that. But there was just a lot of, 4, 5, 6 rushes per game. So it's not like this is something that he can do it, but it wasn't like he was running all the time. So I agree with Connor. I don't think it's going to be a situation where you're going to see him just run all over the place. Now, it's funny, the Utah State game I predicted, or I put one of my 3 keys to victory was I wanted Jayden Maiava to run a touchdown in, and he did that. So I felt really good about that one. But I think that option there, if it's a red zone play, that maybe you can see him, and you have that option like Jack was talking about, I could throw it to the flat, I could hand it to Woody Marks, or, man, that guy's crashing down from the end, I'm going to just take it and waltz into the end zone. And there were some opportunities for that. So, I think that's something that will try to keep the defense a little bit more honest. But if you're coming into this game thinking he's going to run 18 times or something, I just don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, who knows? We didn't think they were going to throw the ball 50 times against the best pass defense in the country, and they did. So who the hell knows what's going to happen?
11 carries for 40 yards was his high carry and yardage number, but obviously not a great average there. That was against Wyoming last year, but he did run for 8 yards a carry on only 4 carries against Hawaii, 4 for 32. So you're right. He's not Michael Vick back there, but he's someone who, if he needs to run, he can get a first down. And fans all season have been clamoring for a quarterback that can do that, because Miller Moss, unless he was keeping the ball in that design option play to run, did he ever really scramble? Maybe a couple times, and I feel like he got hammered on every scramble that he made. Maiava should, because of what happened last year, be better in those situations, and he's just better on his feet. So that's definitely something to look for. And it'll be fun to have a quarterback who can move around a little bit, that's for sure.
Yeah, just something different. I mean, people need hope, right? You can't keep doing the same thing, bang your head against the wall, losing games in the fourth quarter, and just like fans needed something to go and cheer about. It's homecoming. You got the throwback uniforms from 1972, John McKay stuff going on. Like when I was in school, these were the kind of uniforms that the team wore. You want to get a little bit of excitement. Now, Nebraska probably bring a lot of people because they travel well, but they're not doing very well either, too. So, I mean, to get a little spark in the building, Nebraska could look at, hey, we got a new play caller. USC could look, hey, we got a new quarterback. Let's get a little something going. You need it, and then it might be the same old table when we get in the Coliseum and you're seeing the same thing. But you need some hope coming off of this bye week to try to get a win and finish the season strong.
Yeah, I think even if you don't look at the number of carries that Jayden Maiava will have, I think he provides a little bit more escapability to buy himself a second or two in the pocket. I thought Miller Moss did a pretty good job of that against Washington, but that was with fewer guys coming after him, and he would buy himself a second or two. I also think just overall, it probably means that a defense will keep one more guy in the box to account for Jayden Maiava, and that's one less guy to defend the pass. And I think that the more people you bring into the box, the more Lincoln Riley's pass offense is likely to work.
I agree. One guy that we need to talk about on Nebraska, Ty Robinson, their big interior defensive lineman. If you could build a player in a lab, like that is who USC would build right now. They desperately need guys like Ty Robinson, guys who on the inside of that defensive line win their one-on-one matchups and can get to the quarterback. He is not an edge rusher. He's on the inside, and he has 5 sacks, which leads Nebraska. He's going to be an NFL guy. He's developed. I think he's either a 5th or 6th-year senior. He's been around a while, but he's having a fantastic season. And that is a matchup like him going up against Delani Noah, if that is how it shakes out, or even Monheim or Pregnon. That's a matchup that I'm worried about if I'm a USC fan, because that guy is going to play on Sundays. And when Maiava's making his first start as a USC Trojan, like he's someone who could wreck the game. So definitely need to pay attention to him. I know he'll be all over USC's film study and stuff. They'll have a game plan for him, but he's a really good talent, and he's someone I wish USC had. They need guys like that for sure.
Yeah, when you have pressure up the middle, that's when it's most important to have a quarterback that can extend the play with his legs, because you can't step up into a pocket if a defensive tackle is right there in your lap. So you have to be able to sidestep and move around and make a play. But I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Nebraska's defense has been really good this year. I thought that they played really well this past week against Ohio State, or I guess 2 weeks ago when they last played. And this is a group, it's tough to figure out exactly who they are, with a blowout loss to Indiana, but then a really close game in the Horseshoe against Ohio State. And I don't know whether that says something about those two programs, Indiana and Ohio State, but it seems like Nebraska doesn't really have it hammered down what it is week to week. We can expect, I think, what we're going to see from USC week to week, but Nebraska, I don't know if you can say the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a team that commit a lot of penalties. They also had that loss at home to UCLA after playing Ohio State super tough, and UCLA's been playing really well. Got a couple road wins. They just beat Iowa in the Rose Bowl last week, and they're going up to Friday. Tomorrow they'll be up playing Washington. So it's hard to kind of put a finger on what this Nebraska team is. But if you look at, the root to me is they've just not scored points, and they're averaging 22 points a game or just over that. But their last 3 games, all losses, it's a little over 14. 2 touchdowns a game. That's all you're scoring, and I think overall in Big Ten play, it's around 20 points or something like that. Like, that's just not going to be good enough. And so that's why you're looking at this Dana Holgorsen move, like, hey, we can try to do something. It's tough when you have a freshman quarterback. You're putting a lot on him. He's at 1 touchdown in the last few games or something like that. It's just not been pretty for him. You need to get something rolling there. So, for me, one of the keys to my game, when I do my keys to the game, is going to be, hey, you can't let Nebraska score like 28 points in this game. They're averaging 22. In the last 3 games, they're only averaging 14. What happens? USC kind of does that where, like, oh, Washington's really bad on special teams, or we're going to let them have a bunch of good special teams plays. Or, you've seen that happen a bunch of times. You can't let Nebraska, that doesn't normally score points, score points. So they got to figure something out and make sure that this doesnn't happen there. And, on the USC side, got to score some. But I don't. That's the thing you just have to watch in this one, because they were struggling really. The biggest struggle for Nebraska was on the offensive side of the ball. USC can't be the team that lets them figure out what's going on offense and they start scoring a bunch of points.
And USC should be able to move the ball on offense against UCLA last week, after the first quarter, I think UCLA had like 120 yards and Nebraska had 2. UCLA dominated from the jump offensively. Nebraska got better, but they showed that that defense certainly has some weaknesses. For as well as they did against Ohio State, they probably should have beaten Ohio State. UCLA was the team that deserved to win in Nebraska, and they did. If you take away a couple of stupid penalties by UCLA, then that game would have been a blowout. They had 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that.
Well, they kept Nebraska drives going.
Nebraska drives going. So just 2 big mistakes there. And outside of those penalties, UCLA played really well. USC.
Yeah, they would have got off the field.
Yeah,
and it's like
on one of them for sure, and then on another one it would have been 2nd and 9, and who knows what would have happened.
Yeah.
But you can't, like Nebraska, they need all the help they can get. So if you give them 15 yards consistently, that's a problem. So the defense is good for Nebraska. It would surprise me though if USC had like a ton of trouble with it. I feel like Penn State's defense is better, and USC, it's a different quarterback, but they were moving the ball pretty well against Penn State. They were up big in that second half. Maybe not big, but they probably should have won that Penn State game, up double digits in the second half of that game, or in the first half of that game, before Penn State came back. Like, they were making plays on a Penn State defense that's pretty good at home. USC, Nebraska's good too, but I don't think they're a defense that needs to necessarily scare you outside of a few guys on the inside of the defensive line. It's not that scary of a unit the way some people talk about them. They did well against Ohio State, but they've been inconsistent.
The one weird thing, and it's almost like, well, if you would have started Jayden Maiava against Washington, and like Jack mentioned before, or maybe it was you, Connor, putting another guy in the they just dropped dudes back into coverage, and USC kept throwing into it, and you can't, I think you wouldn't have been able to do that had Maiava been there. Against this Nebraska team where they do a really good job against the run, they're bad against the pass, and Miller Moss probably completes a whole bunch of passes in this game if he's the starter. So it's just, I'm interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out if USC has a hard time running the ball. I think UCLA had some success, but Ohio State, those 2 backs, the transfers they got, they're like Junkins and other studs. I think they averaged 2.5 yards a carry, both each of them when they were playing against Nebraska. So they can shut it down against, that's a team that has way more talent than USC, and they shut the run down on the road in that one. So that could happen in the Coliseum, and then you're going to rely on completing passes down the field. And you got a brand new quarterback who hasn't really done it at USC yet. So that's definitely going to be something to watch. You'd think USC should be able to move the ball, but the strength of what USC's offense could be with Woody Marks, Jack said, being the MVP of the team on offense, they do a really good job, in a lot of cases where they're slowing down, people's run games.
Yeah, and they'll take gambles at times and commit extra guys to the run, and if the other team's running, they'll get a stop. Sometimes they'll commit extra guys to the pass, and if it's a pass play, they're in a good spot. So it's all about USC kind of catching them off guard, and hopefully it's a run play call when Nebraska drops a bunch of guys back to pass, or you throw when they're committing a bunch of guys to the run. It's all about that chess move, and I think normally you trust Lincoln Riley to do that. And Connor, you mentioned that you expect USC to be able to move the ball. I thought in the second half they moved the ball really well against Washington, but there was that Miller Moss interception in the second half, and there were 2 times that they got to the red zone late in the game near the goal line and came up with 0 points. So I think you need to see a real big red zone improvement, which they have done a really good job of this season for the most part, but a big improvement from what the effort was against Washington, in the 20, inside the 20.
Just fewer mistakes. That's been the big problem with USC's offense. The turnovers, the penalties, they've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of times that have been self-inflicted, and just interceptions where you roll your eyes like, what the heck was that? So Maiava, he's a little bit of a gunslinger. I don't think he's going to be perfect in the don't turn the ball over category, but you had to make this change, and it's just fun when a new quarterback plays.
Yeah.
So, here we go.
I'm excited to go watch and just see, I'm curious to see what happens, especially with, how many fans were just berating us over oh, you're a Miller Moss defender. And we're like, no, we think it gives you the best option or whatever. Now we get to see. And I think everyone's hoping, you're following USC, you're hoping that he's going to do really well. But, he might not. And you might have to put Miller. Who knows? We don't know what's going to happen.
If this goes the other way, watch out.
It could be bad. But even if he does really well, then there's going to be a lot of criticism of Lincoln Riley or, see, I told you.
Yeah, but if you win, who cares? Then we're talking about a win,
Yeah. You need to talk about a win.
He can deal with the criticism after a win. If it's another loss, then, oh, man.
Yeah. Just got to get a win. Just go win. Lincoln Riley, you get paid $11 million a year. Figure the shit out. Go win. That's all. There's no more blah, blah, whatever. Just you get paid a crap ton of money. to do your job. Your job is to go win football games. You've not done that. You've lost 10 of your last 16 games. Go win. Go get a win. This team's lost 3 in a row. No excuses. Go get a win. You shouldn't be Maryland's only freaking Big Ten win of the season. Like, that should not happen. Go win the game.
Decent idea. That's a pretty good piece of advice, I would say. We have a live caller in the queue. If you guys want to call in again and join on, pile on the year of crap, as Connor called it. 5124 tunnel is the number, so please give us a call.
We got to change the name of the title of this episode to the year of crap.
All right, going to patch our caller through. Hi, caller. You're on Tunnel Vision.
How you guys doing? It's Mitch from New Jersey. How are you?
Good. How are you, Mitch?
I'm glad we finally come to our senses and included Maiava. But I'm really ticked off that we're losing in recruiting, especially in our own your backyard there in California. I mean, Longstrap, I hope, Lions, and Brad Smidgley. I mean, I read about the high school football scores, and so many of them are leaving. Maybe they can make a law that you say, oh, you come from within the state. One more thing. I wish USC would put the names of the players in the back of the uniforms. They're not the Yankees who have won 28 championships, right? I mean, it's very hard to get to know these players, and they don't have the names. Most teams do. I know the Irish don't do it either.
All right, thank you for the call, Mitch.
Recruiting is not going great. We were doing a live podcast yesterday, and the news broke that, Hayden Lowe, the 4-star edge rusher from right here in Southern California, Oaks Christian, who Chris and Connor were watching in person on Friday, and Lincoln Riley was watching in person, and the player told Chris straight up, committed, no questions about it. Chris puts up the story, and hours later he ends up flipping to Miami. That's not a good look. It's terrible. You don't want to see this. There's only a few weeks until signing day. You don't like it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the answers are. I think a lot of stuff early was they didn't do well in the NIL space. They've raised the money in the NIL space, but that's not the only barrier there. There's other stuff. I mean, there's still the relationship aspect of it. There's, negotiating, getting the right contract to the right people and giving the right message to players. They have money now, but they haven't been using it, in my opinion, they haven't been using it wisely or efficiently. So there's issues for sure. In this USC recruiting world. And there was a top 10 class, and it's not anymore. And we'll see how that goes on. But I like no names on the jersey. I like tradition, so I don't know if you guys. These are young guys. Maybe they agree with you.
No, keep the tradition. Excuse me. What you said yesterday off the air, Ryan, about the recruiting, I thought was spot on. How you talked about how other programs around the country, they'll see USC has a guy locked in, but they'll think that they can get that guy, whereas if a guy's locked in with Oregon or Georgia or somewhere else, like, it's harder to flip. Well, how come USC's guys are easier to flip? And it's a combination of things with money, the relationships, but, like, the relationships are a huge part of it. And, of course, the money is too. But we all thought that, okay, USC, they weren't in the NIL game. Now they are. Everything will just be fixed. Now they're in the game. Everything's not fixed. So what does that logically tell you? It tells you that these relationships that the coaches have with a lot of these top players are not at that same level compared to the other schools. And what did Hayden Lowe say about Miami yesterday? He talked about how even when I was committed to USC, they made me feel like my priority number, or I was their priority number one. I was always so important to them. It felt like USC, they wanted those Georgia guys more than they wanted me. And again, money's a huge part of it, but USC has it now, and they're still struggling to recruit. What does that tell you? The people in charge of the recruiting, they're not operating the way you need to lock down top 10 classes, and that is undeniable at this point.
Yeah, it's more than just the money, and I just kind of came up with this analogy while Connor was talking, but if you're like, if Connor and Jack are like my kids, okay, and I give them both a budget, like, here's a car, you can get a car up to $50,000 or something like that. I give you a budget you can go car shopping and find a lot of different stuff. I'm going to buy this used car for $49,000 whatever, and it's paid for, or I'm like, I'm going to do this lease that's terms over 8 years and I'm paying $1,000 a month. Like, you could do that, and that's like, over the long term, that's a terrible deal. Like, people can have the same amount of money and go shopping and have very, very different experiences. And I think that's what's happening with USC. Before, you were like, we could only go shopping at the nickel and dime store, and now you're like, hey, you can walk into that Lamborghini dealer and see what you do. But that the guy that's the salesman there, he knows what he's doing. You better have your negotiating pants on and know what the hell to say if you really want to walk out of there with a Lamborghini. Before there was a barrier. They didn't have the budget. Now they do, but it's not guaranteed you're going to go get that. And I think that's what we're seeing now is the money. There's money there. There's money available. How do you utilize it? How do you use it? How do you negotiate the terms? And how do you build those relationships? So if there's a competition for that car, you're going to be the one that the salesman wants to go to, and not that they do that, but you know what I'm saying. It's like the families, you have to still have that ability to relate with these players and with the parents. And in some cases, a lot of cases now, and pretty much all cases, the agents as well. It's not just, hey, I'm good at my job, I have a great reputation, come play for me. That might work for some players, but not a lot of them. And now in this world where it's not just, hey, we're building this relationship, but you also have to pay us. There's a lot of just factors that go into it, and you better be doing all of it well. And USC's just not doing all of it well.
Well, and let me know if you agree. Still, you can have a $40,000 deal for the car, ironed out, but someone else comes and tells the dealership they're going to pay $45,000 for the car. If you really do want the car, you can spend all of your $50,000, and it doesn't feel like that's how USC is shopping right now. Is that
no,
true?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you have to. If someone comes in, if there's a better deal coming along, and someone you still have the budget to be able to go out and try to beat a deal like that. But that takes cunning, and the relationships have to be there, and maybe you have a good enough relationship where they're going to come at you for even a little less than this other deal because I'd rather sell it to you. But that's it's just not worked that way for USC. If anything, they have to pay more because the relationship hasn't been there.
Let's see what everything looks like on January 1st, too. I imagine Julian Lewis is not going to sign with USC. If you see all the writing on the wall, he's been gone for a while now. I don't even know why USC is still courting him. I feel like at this point, it's just optically, you should let him go, have him decommit, and let's get on with our lives. So you're not paying him. You're not paying Hayden Lowe. Like, there's still money left. Let's see how they use it. Maybe the high school class is underwhelming, but let's see what they do in the transfer portal. I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but all I've been told by everyone we talk to, and Ryan, Jack, we all hear the same thing. Like, they do have a budget that is consistent with some of these top programs. It's not in Ohio State, but it's probably that second rung below them. So they have a kitty here, and maybe it's not high school recruiting where a lot of this money goes this year. Maybe it's in the transfer portal. Like, they're going to have to do something because if they keep losing these guys, you're obviously not paying those guys, and that means that their kitty will be higher. They're going to have some opportunities to pay some guys moving forward. So right now it stinks, and it's a huge problem that they lost Hayden Lowe. I'm not trying to make any excuses for it, but it's not like you're New Mexico State and you don't have any money to pay these guys. They still have some money. Let's see how they use it going forward before we totally tell the whole story.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something that USC fans don't want to hear, but also when a program goes 4-5, like, you're bound to lose some recruits. If someone committed, last season on the promise of, hey, we've built this culture and we're going to be really good this year, you should commit as part of our class. Or they saw the win against LSU and they said, okay, well, this program's moving in the right direction, I'm going to commit. I don't think you can blame someone for that if they've now decommitted, seeing that USC's 4-5. And I think anyone out there that's watching, if you weren't a USC fan, you weren't watching the show because you're a USC fan, and your kid was committed to USC, and then you see them go 4-5, do you genuinely think that USC is the best place for them to go? Some people, football-wise, wouldn't see it like that. And we've come on the show every week and talked about how USC is being stubborn and not fixing its problems and isn't making the moves it needs to make in order to fix the season. At some point, you're bound to lose recruits when that's happening. It sucks to see it when it's in your backyard and it's a top 50 player and one that said he was locked in, but you can't go 4-5 and expect to keep a top 10 class every single year. I feel like statistically that's just not always going to happen.
Yeah, and I think just in general with everything that you do in life, like, there's a lot of decisions that get to be made. Excuse me. And when you're adding in the recruiting world, you have to make a lot of decisions. So who are we going to recruit? Are we going to recruit this guy harder than this guy? And in the old school recruiting world, there was a lot of things you need to do. Who's our priority? If we prioritize him, he's a longer shot, but we might make the guy behind him mad. And there's all these kind of decisions you have to make about how much contact you do and all that kind of stuff. And now you're adding money into it, and there's even more decisions to be made, and there's more issues that can happen. And I think some programs are worried that, like, hey, we're going to come in. We offered this guy extra money. We paid him more. Well, now he's making more than starters are. And how is that? So you have to navigate all of those waters too. And I think when USC was coming into this and they weren't paying some of the high dollar values and they got guys that kind of just wanted to be there more than to get paid. Now you're trying to get guys that are going to get paid too. And they're going to get paid more than guys that are already there. And so that's why you have to be really, every I dotted and every T crossed to make sure that you pay the right guys and make it all work in the locker room. And USC hasn't had that. They haven't been this button down organization where everything's running super smoothly. You got to get there. And it's all part of this process. Teams like Oregon, and there's a lot of SEC teams that were doing this before it was even legal. They're used to the bag thing, and they've made that work in the locker room. And USC's sort of been later to that party. And I think that's probably part of the problem too, is what if we just start dropping huge bags? Now what do we do with everyone that's already on the team and stuff? So there's a lot of issues there, and it's not just how much money do we have. I would say that that's not a big issue anymore. Like, you have money. How do we disperse it? How do we make everybody happy with it? And how do we take this pile of money and make the best roster possible that keeps everyone happy, and we move forward and win a bunch of games? That's not an easy one-on-one. We don't see the high-spending teams winning all the time. That's just the way it is. The Yankees forever. They haven't won a World Series in a long time, spending everybody. It doesn't always equate to that. So you have to have a great organization that knows how to use that money wisely and put the best team on the field.
And should that be the head coach's job to have to make all those decisions? It would be helpful if there was someone else in a role who could help build your roster. And USC does have a general manager in place, but it's no secret that the administration at USC really wants to bring in a new general manager. Maybe they don't call it a general manager. Maybe they call it a president of football operations, but someone to help to do exactly what you were just talking about, Ryan, where, okay, the game has changed, so we have to pay these younger players more than maybe some older players are getting to get them in. If you're the head coach, of course that doesn't make sense to you, and you can't really sell that to the older players. But if you have someone else who's making those decisions, maybe that can help you, where you just say, hey, look, older player, sorry, this guy's getting more money, but this is just how it needs to be right now. And if you can blame someone else for making that decision, maybe you keep the guy happy. Right now, it's all on one guy, and it's Lincoln Riley doing everything. He is the offensive play caller. He's determining the game plan. He's the guy on the sideline who needs to manage the game. He is the top recruiter. He runs the collective. He's the face of the program. That's way too many hats.
Yeah.
He clearly needs some help, and that's a big part of this story, too. Look at Alabama with Courtney Morgan, a guy who USC tried to go after. Alabama's dealt with a few decommitments. I don't believe, or I'm not totally sure if they still have the number one class, but he built Washington to a national title contender. He was a big part of that. And Alabama has a top 5 class. They might still have the number 1 class, and he's been a big part of that. You need help.
He was at Michigan, too.
Yeah, and I don't know if USC right now has people in place that can really help do this. And until they do, we could still see more decommitments coming, which is disappointing. Yeah,
the good things are trying to hire somebody, but, you need someone like that in place. It's a whole new role.
You needed it a while ago.
You didn't need this before. You didn't need someone to manage a salary cap. Well, now you do. And you didn't need someone to not just, if you go out and, Coach Henney's recruiting a defensive lineman that's a 4 or 5 star guy, and you bring him in and he stinks, you're not blaming him for that. But now you have a situation where if you spent this kind of money on this player, maybe it's a portal player, you brought him in from a group of 5 team or from another Power 4 team or whatever, and he stinks, you need someone that's has the spreadsheets and who do we get return on our investment from? If you spent $1 million on a guy that sat the bench and then transferred out, that was not a very good return on your investment. So these people are spending money. It's going to be in the athletic department too, but you have a lot of boosters spending money. And if Jack is, graduates from USC and making millions or whatever, and it's here's $1 million for the football team, and you stink, he's going to be hey, what the hell happened to my money? And part of that job is to be here's what we spent it on, blah, blah, blah. And if you need accountability on why did we bring these people in that didn't do anything? So this is a whole new ballgame. You just didn't need a role like this in college athletics before, and now you do.
And I would say just in the recruiting in general, especially in the current age of recruiting, it doesn't really matter where someone is committed to. It matters where they sign. And I think as you've seen, all week, this has been a big flip week. silent commitments or verbal commitments or anything like that, they tend to not mean a whole ton, and maybe not as much as fans would like them to. So I think it all comes down to signing day. You could see someone that has flipped this week at any school, flip back to the school they were at before or a new school. It all changes, and I feel like it's only going to, those verbal commitments are only going to mean less and less as we go on.
The game has totally changed, and it just seems like other schools have sort of recognized that quicker. And even when NIL gets better, like it still hasn't gotten better for USC, like the results of the recruiting. But hey, the signing period's still 3 weeks away. Let's see if USC can flip Hassan Longstreet. That would be a big win. I haven't heard anything that gives me confidence that they totally will, but they're trying. So if they can get that done, that will be a good win for them. And there's still 3 weeks here to go before the signing period. So right now, things aren't looking too good, but let's give this group a chance to bounce back, and I think they know that they need to do that. So.
Yeah, and it's funny, like it's changed a lot too. There's no more national letter of intent. Like you're going to be signing these financial agreements, your NIL agreements, and Ross Dellinger did a great story on, they're still trying to figure this out with the House versus NCAA settlement that hasn't even been fully approved yet, and there's all kinds of lawsuits against it, and it's crazy what's going on, and schools are trying to budget for next season based on this settlement that hasn't even been ratified or wherever the term is for that. So it's nutty. But I think there will be some more stability, Jack, like you were saying, if they're signing a contract, you're going to sign a 2-year deal. And if you play this much, you get this much money, and you can't just I'm going to redshirt and just thank you for my money. I'm going to go somewhere else. I think that will, but we're in this weird transition period while we get into this, and there's going to be a NCAA clearinghouse that's going to try to, ratify your deal or whatever. Hey, this is Jack. You can't get $50,000 for signing one autograph, and someone well, why not? If I'm famous enough, I'm Jack Smith. Damn it, I can sign an autograph for $50,000. So there's all these lawsuits and legal battles and stuff that's going to happen, and athletic directors are sitting around how do we make this work? We got to do this now. This is not we're talking about for next year with the recruiting class that they're going to sign in 3 weeks. How are we paying these guys, or what's going on? So they're trying to figure it all out. It's just nutty. It's a circus right now, and you're sort of going down the rapids blind, trying not to hit rocks. You have no idea what you're doing, but trying to prepare as much as you can for whatever twists and turns come. When this is all said and done.
Ryan, can I get $50,000 for doing the show tonight?
Sure. Yes. No, you cannot.
Dang it. Okay. All right, let's get you home to your mom. We've got 2 questions here in the chat that I want to get to.
Perfect.
First one comes from Lisa. Will USC's new athletic facilities have any kind of impact on recruiting in the future?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean.
Should.
We haven't seen – it used to be a facility war because that's all you could spend money on. Now you can just spend money on players. So that's, if they won't need to see a giant fountain – that spits out, gold balloons in your lobby of your athletic, department. I'd rather get $50,000, like Jack said. So I think it helps. You don't want to have antiquated facilities, but it's not I don't think it's going to be a game changer, which, I just don't think that's a thing anymore.
No, I mean, Mike Loxley at Maryland talked about it they had a new facility, and he was I wish we used this money to get players in. It can definitely help, and I know that this was badly needed by USC, but if you are getting paid more from one school than another, are you going to go to the school that's giving you less because they have a better facility? Probably not. You're probably going to go to the school that pays you more and you have a better relationship with the coaching staff. So that's kind of like a tier 3 sort of recruiting thing. It'll help, but I don't know exactly how much.
Yeah, I think it used to be the tier 1 recruiting thing. Now it's a tier 2 or 3. But if USC is able to do the facilities and pay the people money, then that should help.
I think it could be man, these facilities stink. I don't know if I want to go there. You have to pay me more just to go. It could be something like that. So not they got this brand new facility. I'm definitely going to USC.
I'll take less money to go there.
Yeah, no,
I don't think that'll happen either.
Yeah, I'm ready for the hot tub.
Yeah, it's cool. I used to work in the tech world and stuff, and if hey, Google has free lunches and they have a happy hour every day. You get free beer after work. That's great. But if Intel was going to pay me 20% more, I'm going there, and I get the pay for my lunch. So it's one of those things. That's a real thing that would go on in Silicon Valley. It was crazy.
The analogies have been good in this episode.
Yeah.
Roger on YouTube asks, what USC assistant coaches will be fired this offseason?
Jeez.
It's a tough question, obviously, but.
Yeah.
I hate firing people before they get fired, but if USC goes 7-5, I mean, last year they blew out the whole defensive staff pretty much after going 7-5. So changes will be made. Just look at the position groups. Who do you think has done really well? Who do you think hasn't done well? When I look at underperforming offensive line, they're getting better. So that's one that comes to mind. Defensive ends haven't been very good this year, but Anthony Lucas got hurt. So those are two areas I look at. But like, it's a fair question when you're 4-5. So
yeah,
those are probably the two assistants that I'd look at. But I nothing's set in stone. So
the defense got a lot better, and it's the offense that's really been struggling the most.
The defense is the better half of the football right now.
I would say so. Yeah. So I mean, I think you have.
Well,
to
none of the new guys are going anywhere unless they leave
Yeah.
on their own. So you can rule all them out, and then that leaves one guy on the defensive side. So
Yeah.
Maybe
Connor's
Sean
doing a very
Nua,
good
the
job of
defensive
that.
ends. Now Sean Nua, the defensive ends, maybe it would be him, and then on the offensive side, like Dennis Simmons isn't going anywhere. I don't think Anthony Jones is going anywhere unless he wants to leave. He's in his first year. He was floated to be a head coach for one group of five school. I forget which one. I think it could be a good head coach one day. I don't know if he's necessarily ready right now, but I don't see him getting fired, of course. And everyone on the peristyle and on YouTube probably wants Josh Henson gone. The offensive line has gotten better, so that might be harsh, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think the one thing you just want Lincoln Riley to assess, no matter who it is, no matter what relationship he has with them, how do they perform? How did they recruit? How did they develop players? How did they, all of that? How did they coach on game days? How did their units perform compared to the talent that they had available? And I think you have to make an assessment. And, it was good that he did it last year, probably a little late, but you got to keep doing it because best you're going to do is 7-5. That is not good enough, and I mean, it's going to be a long shot to get to there. So I would think you'd have to make some changes. I know he wanted continuity after year one, and I get it. I'll give him that one, but this is not good enough. Like if this isn't working, you got to figure out other people to come in to do. I think it got better with bringing in Danton Lynn and Matt Entz and guys like that. But you can't just sit on your laurels like, oh, we're going to try this one more time. No, you'd have to make changes with this many losses.
Yeah, I think especially because he's proven that when he had to go out and fill coaching vacancies last offseason, I thought he did a pretty good job of hitting on most of the people that they brought in. One thing, though, if he does bring in an offensive coordinator, would that mean USC has to find someone else to not bring back because you can only have a certain amount of assistant coaches?
Yes, but I don't see that happening, though. Like Lincoln Riley, he'd rather not coach, I feel like, than not call the plays. Maybe I'm misreading that, but don't you feel like that's his thing? Like, there's no way he's going to give that up. We'll see. Maybe if they keep losing, that'll make him change. But that would be a huge surprise to me if he stopped calling the plays.
I would be surprised as well. I know a lot of fans have asked for that. I don't think they're there yet. That seems like, in my mind, if I had to guess, if I was the psychologist trying to analyze what's going on with Lincoln Riley, in my mind, that would be his nuclear option. That's the last thing I'm going to try if I need to get things working. I don't think it's out of the question, but it's pretty darn close. That's just my guess.
All right, then last big question from Matthew on YouTube. Do you guys think USC wins this weekend?
Yeah, I got USC winning, but I do kind of think it's going to be like a 27-20 or something like that. I unfortunately for the Husker 247 side, I predicted USC would cover 31-21, but I think it's going to be more like a touchdown win for USC where they don't cover it's 9.5 or something right now. But win the game, kind of a lower scoring game, but somewhere in the 27-20ish kind of range. That's what I'm guessing.
So you're on both sides of the fence, I see.
Well, this is the one that counts. Picking the.
I have them by a touchdown. I think they win 28-21.
Okay.
If Nebraska somehow starts to play really well on offense, you have big problems, I think. That offense, they don't really have any home run hitters at the skill positions. They have a decent true freshman receiver, a solid older receiver. The running back, the Oregon transfer, they have a couple other running backs, but they're 100th in yards per carry this year. Raiola looked really uncomfortable against UCLA. I would be really surprised if all of a sudden they have this renaissance on offense and they're able to do a whole lot. So I like USC by a touchdown.
Yeah, I think 21's the max that Nebraska gets to, at least in my eyes. USC's covered all four of its home games so far this year, so I went with the USC cover. I'm going to say they lead by a touchdown most of the way, but you get a late field goal, win 31-21, and you cover the 9.5. I feel like we say this all the time, but while USC is struggling, I just don't think this Nebraska team is all that great. And, coming on the road most of the way across the country with a new offensive coordinator, facing a quarterback that there's not a lot of film on in Jayden Maiava, I feel confident USC is able to get it done. And, I do think they win no matter what. I feel like this is one that USC wins because they're at home, and I think it just needs to be studied why they're so much better at home than they are on the road. But they've covered all 4 of the games. There was one bad beat in there against Wisconsin, but they've covered all 4 home games. So I'm gonna ride with the trend.
That bad beat got me.
Yeah, and
you're still talking crap about that bad beat.
I do love that. It was great.
I'm rooting for one this weekend.
To Connor's point, so my co-host on the podcast of Champions, if you guys watch that, we cover the Big Ten. David Woods, who writes for Bro, covers UCLA, big trash talker on Twitter. If he's talking trash about USC, he's just trying to egg you on. So don't fall into his trap. Just too many USC fans fall into David's trap. Don't buy the crap that he's selling. But he's a funny dude. He doesn't really go to a lot of games. He traveled to Nebraska. He went to Hawaii too, but he traveled to Nebraska, and he's just in person. It looked like Dylan Raiola was a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
He didn't know what was going on. It was what was it Sam Darnold? He was seeing ghosts or whatever.
Ghosts. Yep.
It felt like
Patriots,
that.
baby.
So I think the hope is, if you're a Nebraska fan, hey, that you're going to bring in Dana Holgorsen, and they're going to simplify things, slow it down for him. He's had the week off. Get him to come out there and play some good football. But that's a good point. I mean, he looked like he didn't know what the hell, if he was coming or going. So USC needs to get to be that again. You don't let him be comfortable. Let him be seeing ghosts, and then you should be okay. Then if he's seeing ghosts, then I think Jack's going to be right, and USC will cover the spread.
I'm not sure really if USC has the pass rush to inflict that upon a quarterback. But we saw that Drew Aller didn't play particularly well to start the game, in the Coliseum. Rutgers quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis, he has not been good against anybody, but he really wasn't good against USC in the Coliseum. So maybe there is something to the atmosphere.
Yeah. One quick question for both of you guys. I haven't looked Eric Gentry still leads the team in tackles for loss, right?
Yeah.
Is someone going to pass?
He might still lead the team in sacks.
Is someone going to pass him? How close are we to getting past? That just seems like a ridiculous when he hasn't played. I put that in my preview sometimes. Oh, by the way, USC's linebacker Eric Gentry hasn't played the last 5 games, but he leads the team in tackles for loss still. The people just what? Yeah, it's a pretty weird one.
Yeah, he's got 7. Kamari Ramsey has 5. Easton Mascarenas Arnold has 4. So if Kamari Ramsey can play, he can get to him.
Yeah, he's been out.
And then with sacks, Gentry has 2, Ramsey has 2, Easton Mascarenas Arnold has 2. Those are the leaders.
Okay.
So none an edge rusher.
No
edge rusher. So you need Mascarenas Arnold, or if Ramsey comes back to get a TFL. Or a couple, and just you need someone to be leading that's not out for the season.
Yeah.
Yes, who hasn't played for
Brutal.
more than half the season.
Yeah, and to USC, I guess to their defense, I feel like the 2 best players defensively this season, both out for the year with injuries, with Eric Gentry and Anthony Lucas.
Kamari, I think is the second
I guess
best.
you're probably right, but it hasn't been an easy season for USC,
No.
but they certainly haven't rolled with the punches, and they were punched against Washington. They've made a move, kind of for the first time this year. They're making a drastic change in going to Jayden Maiava. So unless you guys have anything else, we can wrap it up. But USC has maybe made that change to try and roll with the punches a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's good. I just let everyone know. Hopefully you guys can come out to the game. Have a good time. We really appreciate you coming on and being with us on Tunnel Vision. It's a lot of fun. If you're not a member over at uscfootball.com, remember, Peristyle 50. So just go sign up, and there's a little coupon code box when you're signing up. Peristyle 50. You get half off the annual membership. So you pay for it once. It's great. It's $50 or whatever it is. It's not that much. You get a whole year of access. Just reading the Peristyle every day, you will get your entertainment value in the first week or so. So you will. I don't think you will regret it. If you do, email me and I'll talk you through it. But go check it out.
I regret this.
Peristyle 50. Yes. Maybe if USC keeps losing, you're going to regret it. We regret it sometimes when USC is losing, like they have been. But go check it out. Peristyle 50 for half off.
And if you don't like paying for things yourself and your mom's been pestering you for a Christmas list,
Ooh.
you can tell her, hey, I want this, but it's 50% off if you use this code. So that would be a good idea as well. Especially
Great
because
call.
a lot of people don't know what to ask for Christmas. So there's something, and even if it's next year, and you'll want it for next year, as USC maybe doesn't have a year of crap in 2025. But 3 more games left this season. It starts with a game against Nebraska this Saturday. Thank you guys so much for watching. We've enjoyed having you guys on television. For Ryan and Connor, I'm Jack. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on Sunday for the recap show.